Hello, class, and welcome to Chapter 6 of Introduction to Business. Of course, you know me by now. I'm Al Tacone, your instructor. Hope everything's going well for you here in about the fifth week of the class, sixth week of the class about to begin. Hope you've enjoyed what you've studied so far. You've learned a little something along the way. Now we're going to continue our last chapter on sort of the basics of business and entrepreneurship. And then in chapter 7, we'll get into more in depth on various business topics, starting with management and then getting into marketing, legal aspects of business, and so forth. So we will be having some more specific types of topics that we cover in the future. All right, let's start off by taking a look at, I'm just going to close, I'm sorry, as you're watching me work here. I'm closing out programs so they don't bug us. So you know I'm really doing this live. Let's take a look at what we're going to study in this particular chapter. With the goals as we usually do, we're going to take a look at why people take risks as entrepreneurs. We'll take a look at what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur in a variety of ways and using a variety of methods. We'll take a look at the importance of small business to the American economy. And then we'll also finally take a look, and this will be the bulk of the chapter, and the bulk of what we study in this chapter. We'll analyze what it takes to start and run a small business, including some ways that you can get help to start your small business and along the way help your small business to be successful. So that's what we're studying, just like I mentioned in the last chapter, but I noticed I didn't do a good job of it. Try to keep the videos a little bit more brief so that you can get through them and have a good learning experience. Let's start off with a simple definition for entrepreneurship. Anyone who takes risks and it relates to starting their own business is considered to be an entrepreneur. So if you accept the risk, you also means you are accepting the reward, which in business we define pretty much as profit, self-worth, the motivation that comes along with it, the excitement that goes along with it, but also the risks, which is the ultimate risk of failure, the risk of debt, liabilities, loss of time, your commitment to your family and friends may be impacted, etc. That's what an entrepreneur is. If you're willing to accept the risk part, everyone's willing to accept the reward. But if you're accepting the risk, that's an entrepreneur. Now let's take a look at the characteristics and attributes of successful entrepreneurs. You really cannot fear failure. If you fear failure, obviously you're not going to be a successful entrepreneur, and you probably shouldn't even consider being an entrepreneur. But this is why people take the risks. The opportunity to succeed, they have a vision, you feel as though you can succeed and you want to succeed, so the opportunity's there. Obviously, the one we've talked about in the past is profit. The difference between what you earn and what you spend to help you to earn that revenue is considered profit. And that becomes your income, what you live on, what you share with your family, your friends, you save, reinvest. The independence of being your own boss, not having to answer to anyone. We saw that again in the last couple of chapters, especially the last one, when you had to do a little bit of work in the course and respond to what are the pluses and minuses, the advantages and disadvantages of being, for example, a sole proprietorship, partnership, or corporation. And the challenge. Some people just love the challenge, even though they know it's a risk, sort of like this person that's climbing the mountain. He's taking a risk, but enjoys the challenge of maybe getting to the top. A very good analogy when you take a look at relating that to starting your own business as an entrepreneur. Here's what it takes to be a good entrepreneur. You have to be self-directed. You can't be waiting for somebody to tell you what to do and how to do it. Self-nurturing. You can't be one of those folks, if you are, that needs individuals to come to you and say what a great job that you're doing. You got to be willing to nurture yourself as an employee, as a worker, as a business owner, and nurture the business, which means being patient with it, putting up with the ups and downs, and waiting for good things to happen. You have to be action oriented. You have to be take charge. You're the only one if it's a sole proprietorship or part of a group of people who are entrepreneurs. You've got to be willing to take quick action. Things happen very quickly in the business world. You can't be thinking about decisions for too long. You have to be very much willing to take action and live with your actions. Highly energetic is another popular attribute, if you will, of an entrepreneur. Have a lot of energy. And again, as we've mentioned before, it takes up a lot of time to run a successful business and even to get to the point of being a successful business. So you have to have a lot of energy. If you're one who gets tired too easily, it's probably not for you. And you have to be tolerant of uncertainty. If you're working for a business and you're getting a paycheck every week or every month or whenever you get paid, there's a pretty much a certainty you're going to get that paycheck, whether it be salaried or based upon how many hours you work. But as an entrepreneur, that's not necessarily going to be the case. There'll be ups and downs. Sometimes you're not even going to make enough money to draw a paycheck from the business. The future is uncertain. There's no way to predict necessarily that your business is going to be successful now and to any duration into the future. So you have to be very, very tolerant of having that uncertain aspect of being an entrepreneur. Let's take a look at ideas now. How do you know an idea is an opportunity? Well, here are some 5 different bullet points that can give you an idea of whether an idea is a good opportunity. Sorry to use idea twice there. It fills customers' needs. Again, we've briefly talked about that or discussed that in past lectures and lessons and chapters. You have to be selling something people want. You have the skills and resources to start the business. Later on, we'll talk about how you might go about getting some of those, but you have to have the skills, the know-how. And by resources, we mean capital, and that means you're investing your money, your time, your energy, your efforts. But a lot of times, the focus is on capital resources here, which is money or other assets. You can sell the product or service at a reasonable price. You might remember when we did our chapter on economics, the term equilibrium and the laws of supply and demand. If you sell a product at a reasonable price, and that's a price that people in the market are willing and able to pay, then that product will sell. You just have to make sure that that price is at a point where you're generating more revenue than you are expense. So the goal is to sell at a reasonable price so you have demand while still earning a profit. I can't think of a business that goes into business for the sole purpose of making a loss. You can get your product or service to customers before a window of opportunity closes. Sometimes an item might be hot. It's an item that people really want now, but that window might close in a short period of time or sometimes a long period of time. But you have to make sure that when people want the product or service, you get it to them. One of the bigger problems in a small business is fulfilling orders. And if you're a situation where you can't buy the merchandise to sell or you don't have the resources to actually deliver the services or products that people want, that window of opportunity closes. People want things when they want them. They're not going to wait for you to have the supply. They'll go find someone else to satisfy their need. And, excuse me, it's a good idea if you can keep the business going. It has to be sustainable. If you have a product or service that you're selling now, really the goal is for that business to sustain, meaning long term. You go into the business opportunity or the entrepreneurial opportunity with the sole idea or one of the sole ideas that the business is going to go on forever. That doesn't mean it will, but you have to go in with that concept. Otherwise, why bother? I mean, the opportunity will be lost. So you want to keep the business going. One of the larger growth areas for entrepreneurs is in the areas of home-based businesses. Reasons why: computer technology. You can work from home. Here's a person sitting on their bed with a laptop doing commerce with her customers. Downsizing has led to people to go run their own home businesses, sometimes small, sometimes large. It could be a computer-based business like you see here, or you're selling commerce, whether it be goods or services over the computer, taking orders and having products delivered. Social attitudes have changed, meaning people may value being at home more. For example, if you are a single parent or you are a 2-parent household and you want one of the parents to be home to manage the household and raise children, home-based businesses is a way to accomplish both of those. You kind of get a little bit of the best of both worlds. And new tax laws have loosened restrictions on deducting expenses for home offices. There was a time when you had to really be careful about declaring a percentage of your home as a home office. Was a very auditable item, but now, off the top of my head, can't remember the change to the tax code that took effect in the last tax year, but you can actually take a flat dollar amount out as a deduction for a home office, as opposed to trying to base it upon what you pay for rent or mortgage as a percentage of the square footage. And if you can still do that, but chances are you're going to be an audit risk. But if you go ahead and you take the flat rate that the IRS allows, you're going to have less of a risk of audit. In the United States, home-based businesses have experienced growth due to a variety of reasons. One of the most important reasons, as far as the United States goes, is that the technology has made it easier to start a home-based business. You can actually compete, if you think about it, with larger corporations. This way, you don't need the infrastructure. You basically just have to have somewhere where you can do your basic office work, and have if it's products, have a distribution channel. We'll talk about distribution channels later on in the course, but a good way of getting your products and services to those people who want it, and you can actually manage the business in a very small and unassuming location. But here are some of the reasons attributed to the growth of home-based businesses besides technology. It's not easy to do. Getting new customers is very difficult. Again, I'm going to refer to one of my favorite shows, Shark Tank. They always talk about what is the cost of your customer acquisition. Well, that deals with marketing. How do we get people to know about our products? How do we get them to touch, feel, appreciate what we sell so that they're willing to take that next step and buy our products? That comes with a cost. Advertising and marketing costs are not inexpensive. Self-discipline. Managing your time requires self-discipline. You're probably finding that out taking an online course. Even as a teacher of an online course, it's very, very easy for me to say, oh, I'll just get to that later because I'm not sitting in my office. I might be at home. The computer's out on my desk and so on, the printer. But, something good is on TV. My son is driving me crazy in the other room. He wants to go to a movie. He wants to do this, whatever. Other family obligations, other personal obligations. You have to be extremely disciplined and carve out the time that's going to be dedicated to your home-based business, and try to fit that into the limited amount of hours there are in a day or a week. And that brings you to the third bullet. Work and family tasks sometimes not separated. Sometimes you have your kids working within your home business. Other times they're too young, not interested, you don't want them to for whatever the reason. You have to make sure that the tasks are separated. The more they get blended, the more difficult it's going to be to focus on the home business. Example, at home, myself as a person who teaches online, I also teach live classes on campus, but the online ones, I have to basically tell my son, yep, I'm taking this 2 hours. It's a Sunday morning, it's 6 o'clock. You probably notice when I do a lot of the work because you get your grades and messages from me. I have to get him busy doing something else. He's only 10, so I have to get him busy doing something else while I get my work done for my class here for you. Now, don't you appreciate that? I'm just kidding. Government ordinances may restrict your business. Again, you probably can't easily start a farm in an urban setting. You have restrictions with homeowners associations, so you want to make sure that any type of ordinance or restriction allows for your business startup and sustainability. And your homeowner's insurance may not cover business-related claims. You really want to check that. Most homeowners' policies, the basic policies, are going to be liability-based. They're not going to be covering, however, issues related to a home business. That's going to probably require something called a rider or some other policy to cover your business. It's been steady. Home-based businesses growth has been steady. But remember, success in this area is very hard work for some of these reasons. And discipline, at least in my opinion, is the key. One of the more popular home-based businesses, or even outside of home-based businesses, are online type of commerce. Here you see some statistics as of 2010, almost $173 billion, which account for 7% of all retail sales in the United States. That's fascinating, which means the big box stores, retail big box stores, J.C. Penney's, Macy's, Target, Walmart to some extent, this has taken a percentage of their sales. All retail sales were up by 2.5% in 2010, but online grew 11%. So if you do the math there, what you can see is if you took the 2.5% out, That was the retail sales growth. And if online sales grew by over 3 times that, that means online retailers actually took existing sales away from existing non-online retail outlets. So people, what we're saying here is people left the traditional box store retail outlets or going physically to buy stores so that they can buy online. Oh, there's one other stat I just noticed. I made a note to myself here. By 2014, which was last year, and we did it, this was achieved, $250 billion is the projected online sales for the United States. And you can imagine the bulk of that commerce happening in about the last third of a calendar year due to the holiday seasons. In order to develop new ideas, engineers at Google are allowed to work on projects that interest them for up to 20% of their time at work. This is a good example of an intrapreneur. The idea is to support creative people and ideas in an effort to launch new products. This work can be more motivating than working on someone else's ideas. That's what an intrapreneur is. Google, and what I just described to you, uses that concept even though they have people working for them. An intrapreneur uses a company's existing resources to launch new products. So Google says, come on in, we'll pay you, be creative, come up with a new idea, and we'll fund it, we'll sell it. And how do you benefit? You actually get paid by Google or whatever, whoever the company is. It's a little bit different than an entrepreneur because technically you're working for a company. The example I gave you with Google, you're actually working for Google, and you're generating a salary or some kind of pay from Google, but it also gives you kind of the benefit of being creative if you're that type of person. There's another example here. The last bullet talks about 3M, which is a huge company. One of the products they make is Post-its. But you can see here he was trying to make mark pages of his hymnal without damage. Hymnal, the thing that you read in a church, has the Psalms in it, and he actually didn't want to bend the pages, so he created Post-it notes. And needless to say, I'm sure that Art Fry did very, very well with 3M as a result of that invention, as I look at all the Post-it notes sticking on my computer and my desk. Small businesses is another form of entrepreneurship. Any business that's independently owned and operated is considered a small business. They're small in relation to other businesses in their industry. That's what makes a small business. If you are like this individual on the slide, a dress manufacturer or seller, but you're not one of the major companies or organizations that produces the dresses for resale, you're considered a small business. You're not dominant in the field, but what you do is you find what you'll learn later on in marketing could be called a niche market. You create something or you sell something that maybe the larger, more dominant firm in that field doesn't produce, and you generate your sales that way. All right, here are some statistics regarding small businesses in the United States. I won't read all of them, but you can see there are 27.8 million small businesses in the U.S. A lot of them are sole proprietorships. And as you learned back in the last chapter, small businesses are by far, in number, the majority of the types of business ownership in the United States. Small businesses account for over 50% of our GDP. Hopefully you remember that is from back in our chapter on economics, gross domestic product, what is produced in the United States gross per year or per whatever time you're measuring. And they generate 60 to 80% of the new jobs. And that's why small businesses are one of the reasons they're so critical to the United States economy. It's because of the new business generation, the new employment generation, they're responsible for upwards of 80% of those jobs. So they contribute hugely to the U.S. economy. Here are some major business functions. They not only apply to small businesses, but they apply to pretty much any business. So what we're going to do now, starting here on, is take a look at what it takes to start and run a small business. Starting any business is when your real work begins. It's important that entrepreneurs especially understand the major business functions that you see here. They're listed: planning, financing, knowing your customers, managing employees, and keeping records. There are other functions for larger businesses that we're going to take a look at, and they're much more broad when we get into our management chapters, but these pretty much are what a small business owner would have to focus on. Many entrepreneurs create business plans. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit here, which may be in part, or may in part outline these 5 functions that you see here. They must be performed for a small business to be successful, and they must be outlined in a business plan. Your critical thinking assignment for this particular chapter, when you do it this week, relates to taking a look at a business plan for a particular type of company and responding to some prompts. So you might want to keep that in mind. That's going to be a focus of your critical thinking for this particular chapter. Business plan, as I already mentioned, should include or must include those 4 things, and really it needs to be detailed. It's in writing. It has to be in writing because you're going to be using this to get financing in all likelihood if you need financing. It should describe the target market, the advantages that you'll have over your competition, because remember, you're going to try to convince somebody possibly to loan you money or to get other types of individuals or other people involved in helping you to operate your business. And it also should indicate the resources and your qualifications. For example, if you're going to start up a restaurant, you have absolutely no knowledge of how that business operates, your chances of actually getting potential ownership to buy in or potential investors to buy in is going to be extremely limited. They want to know that whoever's spending their money that they've lent you actually knows what they're doing with it. And as I said, the last bullet here is really the critical piece. A business plan is mandatory for talking with bankers and investors. So I ask you, when you're doing your critical thinking writing assignment this week, and actually when you look, even as you view your company profile for this week, pay close attention to the aspects of a business plan, especially if you're an individual who thinks you might want to be an entrepreneur sometime in the future. All right, so let's take a look at the specifics of writing a business plan. It does take a long time to prepare, and for that reason, a lot of individuals looking to be entrepreneurs might even hire a consultant to help you do that. A good executive summary, which should be at the beginning after you insert it at the beginning after the business plan is written, needs to catch the interest of potential investors. Investors are very, very busy. They're extremely busy. They're not going to have time to A, help you write the plan, or B, cull through the entire plan to make a decision. They want a good summary so that they can get an initial idea as to whether or not they're even interested in investing in your company. Then, as you catch them, it's just like any good marketing or advertising plan, as you capture their interest, and they may start to delve in and give you more questions. Again, I keep going back to that show Shark Tank, but that's the template for exactly what you see here. You got to catch the attention of the people who are the potential investors, and then they start to ask questions to try to cull through what it is that you're offering and get to where they need to be to decide whether or not they're going to invest. So getting the plan into the right hands is important. It's into the people who have the money, the people who are most likely to finance or help you to finance your business. And again, once you have them in front of you, because they're very, very busy, you don't want to lose them. So it's critical that you catch their attention right away and give them a reason to stick around and actually delve deeper into what it is that you're proposing. One of the major reasons businesses fail is lack of capital. Capital can come from internal sources, such as what you see here on the slide. One source of external funding is called venture capital. That's the one that's highlighted down at the bottom of this particular slide. They're individuals, or they can be companies, that invest in new businesses in exchange for stake and ownership. Very much, again, like that show Shark Tank. If you want to see it, I keep referring to it, but they show it in reruns on MSNBC, and it's also on ABC television network. I believe it's Friday nights at 9. Sometimes I run back-to-back episodes. But it gives you a very, very good idea of what venture capitalism is all about, and really what a business plan is all about, and what is necessary in a business plan to be successful and to actually get the revenue that you need. Many well-known businesses like Google, Zappos, which is one of your company profiles, Apple, received a first round of funding from venture capitalists. They presented a good idea, and the venture capitalists bought into it. But here are some other sources as well. Obviously, your personal savings, if you want to use that, friends, relatives, former employers who have confidence in you. Banks and financing companies, we studied that a little bit when we talked about economics and the role they can play. Government agencies, we'll see in a few minutes. Angel investors, folks who really don't know you, but you've run your idea by them, and they don't necessarily want a huge stake in your company, but they want to be kind of on the outside. They don't want to have much to do with managing your company or participating in your company. They want to be sort of like the angel looking over your shoulder to make sure you're doing okay. As far as government agencies, the SBA, the Small Business Administration, is a source for financing. You can read more about that here, or you can go to the SBA website. And if you actually print, or I shouldn't say print, but you look at the PowerPoints that go along with my lectures, you can actually just click on SBA and get there. But you certainly can go to their website. The SBA, it's a government agency, as I said. They advise and assist small businesses with financial advice and management training. Website is just very simply www.sba.gov, or as I said, you can click on this SBA link if you want to get there quickly. Really what they do is they judge whether your program is worthy. So they look at your integrity and the soundness of your business idea. So that all goes back to a good solid business plan. SBIC, Small Business Investment Company, that's another government program which or money can go to it. From the government to this private investment company. They're licensed by the SBA, Small Business Administration, to lend money to small businesses. So what happens is this is a private investment company, small business investment company. Here's some of the rules regarding SBIC. It's not as well known as the Small Business Administration, but it is available. Small Business Development Centers, we like to call them the SBDC. There's one up here in Oceanside that actually is run through Miracosta College as part of a grant. They're funded by the federal government and individual states, so some federal funding and some state funding goes to SBDC. There's also one housed at Southwestern College, and they're able to evaluate feasibility of your idea. So you go in, experts will look at your idea, help you to develop a business plan at no cost. So they'll help you to complete your application for loans, help you complete your business plan if you need an application to incorporate in that particular state. They're all there, and it's no charge to you because it's actually funded by the state government and federal government funding. If you want more information about that, email me. I'm familiar with it. I'm from both the Southwestern College perspective and the Miracosta College perspective. It's actually right on Mission Avenue in Oceanside. All right, let's take a look at, we just looked at some of the sources of funding. Now let's take a look at how the entrepreneur can be successful in their business venture. Keep talking about the market, but the market's defined as they're your customers. Anyone or any consumer that has unsatisfied wants and needs. So if you are good at analyzing and coming up with what consumers are, what are the unsatisfied wants and needs that are out there, and those people have resources and willingness to buy, that's a market. So it's one thing for people to have wants and needs. It's another thing for them to have the ability to pay. So that's what needs to be clearly defined, and that's why pricing strategy is so important, because when you're looking at willingness to buy, a lot of that has to do with the price. It's just like when you look at, well, I'm going to go buy a new car next month. Okay, hey, what do I really want? I really want a brand new Mercedes S-Class. It costs $120,000. Boy, I want that. I would be maybe willing to buy it, but I don't have the resources. I'm not going to go out and buy a car like that and personally put myself into that kind of massive debt just for a vehicle. So knowing your market is critical. You offer, and actually once you know the market, you have to make sure that what you're selling is not only at the fair price, but of top quality. You want to develop a good reputation so that you get repeat customers, or you become sustainable by your current customers actually doing marketing for you. They tell others about how great what you're selling is, and it actually generates a whole new market or customer base for you. This is a very, very basic principle of business success. And again, as we move forward in the course, we'll look at management and we'll look at marketing separately in a lot more depth and a lot more detail. No different for small business. Large business and big business, the market is absolutely the foundation. Knowing the market is the foundation. As I said, we'll be delving into management, a lot more detail and depth, actually starting in our next chapter. But managing employees, if you have them, and again, just because you're a small business or you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean you'll have no employees. You might, but you could have some. The goal is to hire and train and motivate them because they're the ones who are going to be potentially dealing with your customers, or even if they're behind the scenes manufacturing. Motivated employees, well-trained employees are going to be producing quality products and services that are going to actually be sold to your marketplace. Small employees of smaller businesses usually, or at least statistically, are more satisfied with their jobs because they feel challenged and respected. And that's probably because there's so few of them, as opposed to them possibly working in a factory with hundreds or thousands of employees, where it's very, very difficult for the ownership or management to give individual recognition or a sense of worth with so many individual employees. And usually when you talk about entrepreneurs, they are the business. They usually are the ones that know the business very well. They know the market very well. They're in the best position to groom employees. So if you want to actually be a strong entrepreneur and have sustainability, grooming your employees to take over some of the roles and responsibilities that you perform as an entrepreneur in your business is critical. Otherwise, you may find yourself in the position of getting burnt out or not being able to spread your time as you might normally would or want to. Another aspect that we discussed is accounting assistance. Computers obviously simplify the process for accounting, but that doesn't mean to know you don't need to know accounting. Aspects of inventory control, records of your customers, knowing who owes you money, for example. Also knowing who you owe money to in the terms of payables. Payroll. A lot of companies now will farm out their payroll to private companies because it's a very costly aspect of accounting, but there are laws, rules, regulations related to payroll that are near and dear to the hearts of your employees. So if they work, they must get paid and they must be treated within the legalities of labor law. Again, hiring an accountant, if you're not good at that or you need assistance, is probably the best advice. They can help you to decide things like, because they can do analysis you may not be equipped to do, whether to buy or lease equipment, whether to rent a building or own a building, tax planning, forecasting, sources of funding, writing requests for funds from a financial institution are all things that an accountant can help you with. And you don't have to hire an accountant. You can actually use any accounting firm, private bookkeeping firm, private payroll firm to assist you in this regard. Yes, it's going to become part of your expenses, part of your costs of running the business, but if you don't have the expertise, the cost of not hiring the accountant can be even more costly. If you make mistakes and you end up spending money that you don't have or capital that you don't have, or you make mistakes in payroll, then end up getting you into difficulties with the government or with your employees. From a legal standpoint, again, unless you're a lawyer, you want to have a competent lawyer working with you on anything from anything you sign contractually. Probably should be run by somebody who's an expert, unless you are, like I said. But any type of agreement, we talked about partnership agreements in the past, developing your company as an LLC or any other type of a corporation. When you sign a contract, the lawyer will work to protect you against liabilities. Their job is to keep what we call your exposure low. We want to make sure you're not exposed as a lawyer. Not me, I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyer wants to make sure you're not exposed to liabilities. And that's one of the things that they're going to ensure before they advise you to sign contracts. So you get the consulting advice early. You don't want to hire the lawyer after you're having difficulties. You may not be able to afford to hire experts, but you can afford to hire the, even paraprofessionals or paralegals to help you with certain specifics. But when you get into really detailed or complicated issues like leases and contracts and agreements between parties, the lawyer is going to protect you. It's like an insurance policy against future liabilities and problems. Again, going back to marketing, we talked about marketing and knowing your market, I should say, as being a critical aspect of a successful business and a successful entrepreneur. But you're going to be making decisions related to marketing. Conducting marketing research studies is going to be critical to that. And we'll look at that again in more detail in the future when we do our unit on marketing. But where to place your business is important. Even if it's a home business, that's going to be important to decide. Who your target market is, defining exactly who is out there that's going to be willing and able to buy your products and services at a reasonable price. And what is your strategy for reaching that market? In other words, how do we get people to know our product even exists? How do we get the product distributed to those people, or our services distributed to those people, those consumers who want our product? It's all about finding out customer needs and how you can better understand your customer needs. The market research aspect of marketing helps you to determine where your customers are, and how to target them. That's really the crux of it. Where are they, and how do I get them to buy what it is that I'm selling? Okay, we're just going to wrap up here with a few other forms of help that are available to you beyond the ones that we mentioned or I mentioned earlier to you. So if you are contemplating being an entrepreneur, getting started in your own business, you can go to these folks, and usually they're going to give you free advice, because they're hoping that if they give you good advice and advice that you want to take on and use, that you'll come back and actually use them to provide you with a service. Like a commercial loan officer, they can help you to devise a business plan, give you financial advice. Insurance agents, they're always very helpful, almost to a fault, because when you go to an insurance agent or broker, the immediate pitch is for them to sell you something. But certainly if you can sit down with them, they'll help you to learn about the risks associated with the particular business that you want to get involved with, how insurance can help you to reduce your exposure to those risks and prevent risks in the future. It's not much different than having automobile insurance. You don't plan on getting into an automobile accident, and you certainly hope you never do, but if you do, the insurance prevents your exposure to loss. And one other one, Service Corps of Retired Executives. Again, go online. You can go to Service Corps of Retired Executives. There are over 10,000 volunteers from existing businesses in industry, trade association, education, who will counsel you at no cost. It's sort of their way of giving back to the community. It's their way of participating in social responsibility. Again, something we've studied in the past, by giving back to the community and giving back to the economy by helping people to start and be successful in their own business. So all of this comes free. You just have to go out there and actually find out where to find these resources, just by going online, finding out who you might want to visit. You might even have family and friends who do this kind of work, or that can help you to find individuals who can help you. All right, that one was a little bit of a briefer chapter. It's really more of an outline chapter. And if you want to learn more, I strongly advise, besides doing your required work for the week, that you can certainly delve deeper into any one of these topics that we've discussed on being a successful entrepreneur. All right, so that's it for Chapter 6. Just a reminder, what you do always after you view your video lecture, you read your chapter as usual, go into Blackboard and take a look at and view the entire company profile for Chapter 6. You want to log into Connect and Learn Smart, and as usual, you have your Learn Smart assignment, your chapter applications that are due, your case study that is due, and your critical thinking writing assignment that is due. And then finally, your discussion board prompt responses are always in Blackboard. Always pay attention to your syllabus and the announcements that I send out regularly to remind you of any other things like exams, etc., that might be due in a given week. I try to be as thorough as possible in my announcements and send you communications as necessary. I'm trying not to bombard you, because I know sometimes with online course announcements you get just way too many of them, and I try to keep Blackboard what I call unclogged. So any outdated announcements, they're not going to be there. I mostly keep there just the things that are pertinent for a particular week, so that you can when you go to Blackboard, you have exactly what you need, and only the information and direction that you need for that week. All right, so that's the end of Chapter 6. Hope you enjoyed it and enjoyed listening to me. My cold has dissipated, I think, for the most part. Hope you enjoyed viewing the video lecture. As usual, the PowerPoint version in PDF form is also available in Blackboard in the lecture menu. Enjoy doing your work for this week for the course. And as usual, if you have any questions or concerns, you just want to ask me anything about the material covered this week, you can always contact me. Again, email is the best way. All right, thank you very much for watching. Have a great week, and I look forward to hearing from you, and I certainly look forward to reading all of what you do. during the course of the week as you respond. Have a great week.